Hey folks, if you've ever struggled to learn JavaScript, today this video is for you. All right. I can't wait to help you get started. Maybe you've tried to learn to code before, and maybe you tried to learn JavaScript and it really didn't go well for you. Maybe you've picked up some HTML, some CSS. Man, that programming thing with JavaScript, it has just not been happening. If you're family focused and want to unlock your career potential in tech, right, to really hit that next income level to serve, the quality of life that you're looking for and to help just spend time with your family the way you want to have time with them. If you're not earning six figures in tech yet, let's get you there. We're going to start today. Okay, let's start today. So, can you get a six-figure tech job without knowing JavaScript? That is the question here today. So, have you ever felt like learning JavaScript is like banging your head against the keyboard? And it can be frustrating. Believe me, when I first started learning how to code, it was a struggle. It didn't come easily. It took me a long time to master these skills of how do you think like a six-figure software developer? How do you think like a coder when you approach problems? Okay. So if you're here joining us today, drop me a link or just, give me a wave, even if you're watching the replay, that, what have you tried to learn in programming before that was a struggle for you, that didn't come easily? Because there's nothing worse than sitting here, like banging your head against the wall, trying to learn, Googling all the things, using ChatGPT, and just being frustrated that it's not making sense yet, right? To be just so frustrated that this whole coding thing isn't making sense yet. So like, for instance, if you've been coding before, we do all these steps and all we do is create this little tiny hello world. So, right, you're doing all these steps, right? You're coding things. You have to write all these weirdo words and letters and characters, and all you get is this little tiny hello world on the screen. Just that little bit, right? You did all this stuff and you get all this stuff installed. There's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of pieces. And it's only to print this tiny little bit of gibberish, hello world, on the screen. So how frustrated is that? So if you've been frustrated learning to code before, drop me a comment. Let me know what language, right? Because I want to hear from you guys. Now, if you've been feeling like learning to code has been like this, what if what you really would like to see is if you're having a blast, right? Making software and cool things that will change the world, right? Isn't that, when we set out to have a tech career, isn't this the feeling and the experience that we really want to have, right? Okay, so how do we get our learning experience to feel like this, to feel like fun and infinite possibility and opportunity, and to get out there, right? So that we can have fun while we're learning and unlock our career potential, unlock our earnings potential, so we can have that quality of life that we're looking for, that we can have that remote tech job that can unlock doors to anywhere from 60, 80K, 100K. Our top student this year was 170K, right? Like, how do we unlock salaries like that, day in, day out? So can we have a fun learning experience and earn like really what we want and deserve to be earning? All right. So if you're here because you're learning how to code so you can get a better job, can you guys post in the comments? I would love to hear from you. All right, folks. So learning to code can be fun, right? And, we're in this because we want to have a blast and build super cool things that, might even transform the planet. Our number one priority, obviously, is, we have to take care of our needs, right? We have to make sure that we've got that quality of life that we're looking for, that we can have fun with our family and our friends and just have money to make life be easier. But at the end of the day, once we have that and our needs are met, what's next, right? How about building some of the coolest things on the planet? So, okay, so let's focus for a second on why is JavaScript a barrier for so many? Why is JavaScript so hard to learn? All right. Now, I've had a lot of students come to me and say, okay, I got this HTML and CSS thing down, but JavaScript, what the heck is this? I don't even understand, right? And this is very, very common. I hear this all the time. And in part, it's because technically HTML and CSS aren't programming languages. They are what's called a markup language. So they help make web pages look pretty, but they don't actually change the functionality of the pages typically. There's like things you can hide and show with CSS, but for, by and large, HTML and CSS control how things look. It doesn't control how the information goes from page to page. It doesn't control the flow from one website, page to another. JavaScript does. So it's a technical programming language. The easy definition I use to figure out if something's a programming language or not is, does it have loops and functions? If it has loops and functions, typically it is considered a programming language. If you went to a PhD in theoretical programming languages or computer science, they would tell you a very detailed, different definition. But at the end of the day, right, if you're dealing with something that has loops and functions in it, it's probably a programming language, okay? And so JavaScript is a programming language. Not just any programming language here, folks. Web systems. JavaScript is used to program web applications, web systems, web pages. Web systems, okay, PhD in software engineering and computer science right here. Web systems are the most complex software systems we currently have on the planet. Okay, this is like, trying to learn JavaScript as your first beginner language is kind of like taking a first grader who's just learning how to read for the first time and handing them War and Peace. Here, summarize this. Tell me what this does, right? It's not designed to allow you to easily pick it up. It's designed to be a workhorse. It was kind of cobbled together after the fact, right? To help our modern software systems, flourish and actually do stuff. It was kind of shoehorned together. So this is not the starter place. This is not a place where I would recommend, okay, I want to start learning how to code, so I'm going to start in JavaScript. No, that is not what I would recommend. And there's a number of reasons for that, right? So JavaScript programs web systems. They're some of the most complicated on the planet. Why is that, right? If you think about it, because, as part of my PhD in computer science, I had to learn all the things. So when you write a URL in the web browser, like google.com, right? You go into Chrome or Safari, or does anyone even use Internet Explorer these days, right? Like you go into the browser bar and you type google.com. That simple act has so many steps behind the scenes. I could actually walk you through each one. It takes about an hour for me to tell you exactly everything that happens to the bits on the wire, the ones and zeros. I can tell you every single thing that happens. And so there's a lot of stuff happening. In fact, I've taught a lot of those elements when I was a professor of computer science as well, teaching networking and security as well as software engineering and programming. And so these systems are really complex, really complex, really complicated. And so just to learn the basics of programming, right? If someone wants to learn football, are you going to go put them in an NFL game? Right? No, you're not going to put them in an NFL game because they're going to be totally lost and confused. It's like handing a flute to someone for the first time and saying, hey, go play at Carnegie Hall with the Philharmonic. No, right? It doesn't work that way. We step learning, right? We take baby steps and we have an on-ramp and we make it easier for ourselves. And so when I see people trying to learn how to code and starting with JavaScript for the first time, I know it's an exercise in frustration. The only harder language would be like C and C++, which I don't recommend either, okay? But it can be easier, right? There is a better way to learn JavaScript and get a dev job. So that is one option, right? So if you've been frustrated, if you're trying to learn to code JavaScript because you want a dev job in tech, there are easier pathways. And guess what? You also don't need to be able to code JavaScript to be earning six figures in tech, right? The key skill we want to learn is how to think like a coder. First, hands down. And so if you've been learning how to code, drop me a comment so I can see who you are. I'd love to know who's here with us today. But the first step is learning to think like a coder. That's number one. Step number one, learn to think like a coder. And that doesn't matter if it's in JavaScript or another language. Personally, as an educator, I prefer Python. I think it's a lot easier. But that's the key step, is you need to learn to think like a coder first. To be honest, when I see students following this pathway that I recommend and they learn to think like a coder and then go to JavaScript, typically it's way easier because they already understand how programming in general works. And now you're just translating it to a new way of coding for the web with a new language. And it looks a little different, but it's like our first language that we learn is the hardest. This is true in English, right? Like I'm learning hi and bye and how are you? Oh, I'm good, right? You're learning all these basics of how to have a conversation and you're learning English. When we go learn a new language like French or Spanish or Japanese, we already have the framework of, okay, how does a conversation work? It's still challenging to learn that second language, but not nearly as challenging as learning our first, right? It doesn't take nearly as long. So we're going to learn to think like a coder first, learning to think like a coder first, then tackle JavaScript, okay? So if you want the easy path, right, the easier way to become an awesome six-figure software developer, learn to think like a coder first, then tackle JavaScript. If that's the path. But keep in mind, you don't have to be able to code in JavaScript to be capable of earning six figures plus in tech. So let me dive into that for a second. And if you have any questions, folks, please drop them in the comments. Even if you're watching the replay, we'll follow up. Awesome. So what tech jobs require JavaScript, right? So the good news is there is an easier way to learn JavaScript than starting in JavaScript. You can learn the bones and then learn JavaScript. But let's say, you really want one of these jobs. You're going to have to pick that path. You're going to have to somehow learn JavaScript. But on the next slide, I'm going to show you some ways, some opportunities for jobs that don't require it at all. So you might be in the clear. So if you want to become some kind of a web developer, words you might see in a job description: front end, back end, full stack, web software, web application developer, anything like that, right? Frameworks you might see: React, Next.js, Angular, right? If you see these words with JavaScript, you're going to have to learn JavaScript for these types of positions, okay? And these can start, the lowest I've seen web developers start is like 40K. To be honest, I wouldn't even target those because with the same level of skills, you can qualify for jobs like that are much closer to 100K. Most of our students are working towards the 70 to 100K jobs. It's very, very rare that someone will accept a position lower than that, but everybody's unique. Everybody has a unique job height. So like I'm showing you the pathway and the options that you can choose to move forward on. I'm not telling you which way to go. Okay, so if you want to be a web developer, though, if that's your ultimate goal, you will have to know JavaScript, just full stop. You can be a developer in other languages, but JavaScript is such an integral part of our web systems. You're going to have to know it. Like I can't think of a system where you would escape knowing JavaScript because it's really the only tool that we have to execute code on the client, right? When you create a web page, when you create any kind of like web application, if you want code to execute in the client's browser, like when I open google.com, it's going to execute code on my computer for me and then send the data to their servers. JavaScript is really the only gig in town. So there's really not a way of allowing anything else. So you have to know it. You can be a web programmer and program in other things. Like you can know Python and do Python Django for backend server work, or Java, or PHP. Like there's other options, but by and large, you're going to have to know at least a little JavaScript, right? Like no matter what, because even if you're programming on the back end, you need to test out your stuff. You need to test out that your back end is working properly. Back end code is what runs on the server itself. So like you're going to have to do some front end, right? Even to test that your back end is working appropriately. You don't have to live in JavaScript, but you're going to have to know it at least a little bit. There's no escaping that. The other place is if you're doing mobile app development, you're going to want to know at least a little bit of JavaScript. You don't have to program in JavaScript full time for mobile app development. Like if you're building apps for your phone, you can build native ones. So like in Swift, some flavors of C, like C# and Objective-C, Java or Kotlin. Like there are other languages you could live in besides JavaScript. Java is not that different from JavaScript. So, if you're having challenges with JavaScript, you're probably going to have challenges for Java or some flavor of C as well, right? But I recommend that you know JavaScript and use it, because think of what happens in app development specifically. Like modern, web systems that have apps basically have like 3 front ends. What do I mean by this? First, you build the website that you can use on a computer or any device. But then you have to build one for the iPhone, and then you have to build one for Android, because you can't choose what kind of device like one of your users is using when they log into your website. So what most smart developers do is they use a JavaScript framework, it's typically in JavaScript, to build these different versions for iOS and Android, but they only have to maintain one code base. So it reduces the number of things they have to think about and worry about. And in some of these frameworks, you can even use them for just true front-end work, like you might use on, a desktop or a laptop. And so with a framework like React Native, you can code in JavaScript and then export what you've created to all these different platforms. So it makes it easier for you as a single developer to maintain just one code base. Now, if you want to go, be a native app developer, you can. It's just that for any modern business, they're not just rolling it out for iOS, they're doing it for Android too. So you're always going to have this issue where you got to learn more languages, or use a framework that lets you learn one language and just push it out to wherever you want it to go. Okay. And if anyone has tried mobile app development, I'd love to hear it. If you drop a link below, super awesome. So these tech jobs absolutely require JavaScript. Mobile app development, there are pathways without JavaScript, but I don't recommend them, right? I would definitely recommend using a cross-platform framework like React Native to get the job done. Okay, awesome. So now let's get to it. What tech jobs don't require JavaScript? Okay, so I just talked about, if you need JavaScript, if you want to be a web developer, you're going to need JavaScript. But what are these tech jobs that are out there that don't require JavaScript? Okay, if you already have a tech job, you're in some area of IT, but you're not a coder, this is the fastest path to cash that we've seen from the people that have come to us to learn how to code. You combine some kind of IT skill, working in tech, any area of tech, and you throw coding and automations in there, fire sauce, right? We're talking, instant increases to your salary potential. And it can happen really, really fast. I'm going to share an example with you where we had a student who did this in a month. They learned enough coding to totally ace their interview. And it was awesome. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to spoil it. So I'm going to tell it to you in just a little bit. And so that's really awesome. Other tech jobs that don't require JavaScript, low code jobs, right? Now, low code jobs, just to be clear, typically start at 60 to 80K. Okay, these are jobs that are customizing, a system for an end user, business solution specialist, customer or client solution specialist. This is where maybe you're working for a tech company that has software that needs to be customized, and the customization is too complicated for the end user. So they hire you to be able to do that and be that interface, that person that helps get the client up and running. I've seen students, graduate into AWS or Oracle as examples for these types of low coding jobs. They typically don't earn 6 figures though until after you've been working for a few years. So just, full disclosure, I haven't seen students jump straight into a low code job earning over 6 figures. They're usually in the high fives, so like 70 to 100K range. Some other tech jobs that don't require JavaScript would be data science jobs, data science, data analytics, right? But for these positions specifically, you must be good at math, okay? So you have to be good at math for these. There's also freelance web developer positions, but these are low code. So these might not be the fast path to 6 figures because they're not salaried, they're freelance, right? This is where you have to go and make a relationship with a business that needs a website and you would build it for them. But so like you can earn really well. Some of these websites can cost anywhere like from a few hundred to a few $1,000s to create, and then a few hundred, a few $1,000s a month to maintain over time. And so it can be a really nice business model, but you're going and you're finding the work, right? So it's a different, and we actually have a training on this that we just started. We just launched last week. So like, this is totally possible. It's a feasible path, but it might not be the fastest path. Excuse me. Now, I mentioned that we just recently had a student that had a background in IT, paired it with coding, and whoosh, fire sauce. So I'd love to, just take a moment to spotlight the student because, this is someone who had IT background and actually joined us because this individual, Mike, doesn't want an IT job anymore, right? He doesn't love the quality of life, being on call, having all these emergencies. So he can see that the software developers that he works with, they really earn the big bucks and they have a really cushy quality of life. They don't have the same on-demand type, job set up. And, there are some software developers that do have, being on call hours, but that's few and far between. It's not the norm. Typically, software developers are more traditional 9-to-5 style jobs that don't spill over. They may bring their work home with them, and depending on the company that you work for, they may or may not expect that. And that's just something you feel out with each job. But most software developers are working at jobs where they're happy and they have good quality of life. They're not expected to come in at midnight because something went down the way someone who's working in IT might have. So Mike had been laid off in IT and had been applying for jobs for months and months and months, and he just wasn't having any luck. And he decided he really wanted to be a software developer. So he joined us to become a software developer. But a month in, he learned the basics of how to think like a coder. And this was really key for him because he didn't have all the coding skills yet that he wanted to learn to become a 6-figure software developer, but he had the beginnings. He had the ability to think like a coder, to problem solve. And he used that on his interview. He got a question that he couldn't answer, right? Has anyone ever experienced that? Drop me a comment below. If you've ever been on an interview and you weren't sure how to answer the question. Can you guys imagine that for a second? Just like the deer in headlights moment, like, oh my God, they just asked me a question and I don't know the answer. I don't know how to answer that. So Mike kept his head and he fell back on his training where he's using what we call the 7 basics to systematically go through and solve any tech problem. And he did it. He used that training that we teach in the first couple of weeks in the academy, and he was able to solve the problem. He was able to talk through it. Like he explained his thought process to the interviewer, and they loved it. Not only did they love it, they hired him. And this ended up being a $114K a year IT contract. Total game changer. So this individual wanted to become a 6-figure software developer. So Mike joined us to learn those skills. But along the way, he had this happy accident while he's still applying for IT jobs, right? Just to, keep his work going while he's there, while he's learning how to become a 6-figure software developer. And he used those skills to be the top pick for a position because being able to automate and program something is really highly valued in IT. So if you have any kind of technical experience whatsoever, right? Whether it's in, using databases or working with networks, help desk, anything. If you have prior tech experience, you have the easiest pathway forward to a really high paying tech job if you just add coding, that little bit of learning to it. So I'd love to see, some students joining us and really taking off with that. That'd be amazing. So, once you've learned to think like a coder, like this is the possibility, this is the potential that if you have any kind of tech experience whatsoever, this is for you, right? Like this is absolutely the fastest path. But let's say, right, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you don't have a job in tech yet. So what are your options? So if you're just getting started, right, you can totally join us. In fact, I'll add this comment here so you guys can see it. Let's see if I can type and talk at the same time, right? If you want to join us and learn to think like a coder and unlock either higher paying IT jobs than what you're getting right now, or unlocking low code jobs for 60 to 80K, right? Join us inside the TechJoy training camp so you can get started and just start this process going. We also have a brand new freelance web developer training that we're currently recording. We're doing it live. So if that's something of interest to you, you should totally join us. If you want to get skills in tech that are capable of earning 6 figures and more, then please consider joining us inside the academy. This is how you can unlock, web development positions where you can earn 70 to 100K, and learning JavaScript is a lot easier. because of how we have it sequenced, because of how we teach our students. It's really the fastest pathway. I can't tell you how many times I've had students tell me that they struggled for years and years, went to multiple boot camps, multiple degrees, and they learned more in a few weeks with us than doing all of that work over so many years, right? So it really can be a game changer when you have a system that's designed to teach you how to think like a coder properly. Okay, so if you're interested in that, let me drop the link here, joc.moby/academy. Please consider coming and joining us. And then finally, if you're not decided, like you're just not sure where you want to go, you want a job in tech, you want to, upgrade your life experience here, right? And you think that tech is the way to do it. We can help. If you want to really more deeply explore the job landscape and what your career options are, check out this website. It's joc.moby/explore. And I have a little quick video there that'll really show you how, like, what all the options are, like what kind of skills that you have, like what kind of jobs you should go for, how long it'll take to learn them, how much money you could potentially earn, so you can figure out for yourself what kind of option is right for you. All right, folks, it was absolutely amazing to see you today. If anyone has any other questions, please let us know. And if you just want to, go more deeply, every week on Tuesdays, I talk here at 2:00 Eastern every Tuesday. I have a fresh new training for you. If you're interested, you can please come and join us. And we also have a master class Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, December 19th. So come and join us. I'll drop the link down below. If you just go to joc.moby, you'll be able to sign up so you can get the reminders and get access to the Zoom link so you can come and join us live. All right. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Peace.